Good evening. Our top story: in a 40-minute speech, the Turkish President Recep Erdogan dismissed attempts by the Saudi Crown Prince and the King to blame the death of Jamal Khashoggi on rogue operatives, adding that the savage death of the journalist could not be passed on as a mistake and that we cannot blame a hit squad alone and must find out who gave the instructions. Addressing the parliament, Erdogan, however, failed to provide any new leads and reiterating much of what was already in the public domain. He informed his parliament about the sequence of events as investigated by his government, also suggesting that he had spoken to the Crown Prince and the US President Donald Trump many times.
First of all, starting from the day prior to the day of the murder, different planes were taken by a total of 15 Saudi safety, intelligence and forensics experts who came to our country. 6 of this team leave on October on the same day at 22:50, taking private planes. And also another person who was given the impression or the look of Mr. Jamal Khashoggi with his outfit, with his glasses and the beard. This individual and the individual accompanying him also took a scheduled flight after midnight to Riyadh.
The Turkish president said he wants the 18 Saudi suspects held in Saudi consulate in connection with the murder to be tried in Istanbul. Now, Erdogan also made it clear that the Vienna Convention, which protects diplomatic officials, is up for discussion in this particular case.
This murder, yes, was indeed committed in the Saudi consular building, which is considered as Saudi soil. But one must not forget that that area is within the boundaries of the Republic of Turkey. Also, the Vienna Convention and other rules of international law do not allow the investigation of such a vicious murder to be prevented by resorting to the shield of diplomatic immunity. Of course, we will investigate this murder, which was committed inside our country in all of its aspects. We will look into it and we will do whatever is necessary. On the other hand, of course, Jamal Khashoggi was a Saudi national, but on top of that, he was a world-renowned journalist. And this, of course, gives us an international responsibility.
Now, Erdogan's speech coincided with the opening of the investment conference in Saudi Arabia, which Western political figures, leading international bankers and company executives have boycotted because of the furor around Jamal Khashoggi's death. He called Khashoggi's murder a political killing. Erdogan didn't show any faith in the Crown Prince's innocence or the probe being conducted by Riyadh.
Hem Cumhurbaşkanı Sayın Dodon hem Sayın Başbakan.
And joining us to talk a little bit more about this is Salim Atalay, who is a journalist and commentator for Turkey 24, who joins us from Istanbul. Salim Atalay, thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening. What really stood out for you in the speech by the president, the Turkish President Erdogan? Did he fall short of blaming the Saudi royalty, or you felt that he said enough to sort of say that, you know, it wasn't enough to blame the security officials? We will only be satisfied once, we know who actually gave the instructions to kill Jamal Khashoggi.
Who gave the instructions? That's the key point. And actually, as we speak now, I'm seeing headlines that says Khashoggi's body parts reportedly found in Saudi Consul General's garden in Istanbul, which makes the case even more interesting. Now, back to President's speech. President's speech was like a perfect indictment prepared by a very capable prosecution, a team of prosecutors who knew what they were doing. It was forensic evidence, the timetable from beginning to the end. It just gave out the clear picture of how the murder was committed, by who and how, and their innings and outings and all the details that could be only seen in a prosecution indictment. And then we saw the evidence, intelligence intelligence info was mostly played a role in the collection of the evidence. Evidence probably can be produced, more evidence can come out at the prosecution case, but as you explained, where will be the trial, that's a key issue. But more importantly, on the political side, actually, President Erdogan made a difference between the Saudi king and the rest.
Right. Right. I just want to go back to that point that you were making, and it seems extremely significant if it is going to be proven true, that you are saying, Mr. Taleh, that there are reports now coming in that the body parts may have been found. This is something that the Turkish president was referring to. Where is the body? The Saudi Arabian government needs to answer that. So if those initial sort of reports are coming in, that will be significant as well.
And also, mind you, it's body parts, and goes back to the fact that Mr. Khashoggi's body had been dismembered, and certain body parts might be missing. And where are those body parts is even more interesting. That's an interesting question, but I think we expect the Saudis to come up with a few answers too. I mean, you cannot expect Turkey to come with every answer in this case. But back to the political side, President Erdogan made a very clear reference to Saudi king. He called him the custodian of the holy mosques, which was actually the term used by the Ottoman sultans when they were ruling Mecca and Medina. Ottoman sultans were the custodian of holy shrines, and now Saudi rulers are using that title. That's fine, and President Erdogan addressed that, which implied that there's actually no problem with the Saudi king himself.
Right.
But from what we know, what the media knows, or the general idea is, the question is, what does Prince Salman know, and how much is he involved in this? And there is a tacit implication that Prince MBS might be very much implicated by this whole case.
Right, but even if he is implicated, what are the real repercussions for that for Saudi Arabia? We know that the US, the US president first said that this was a sort of responsibility of rogue operatives. He almost sort of preempted what the Saudi Arabian government was going to say in a sense. He's backtracked since then, and now the CIA chief, Gina Haspel, is also part of the investigation. So even if the Crown Prince was to be implicated, what are the real repercussions here for the government?
Well, it all rests with the Saudi king, who actually, very interestingly, chaired the Saudi cabinet meeting just minutes ago. And the statement from that meeting was that the king himself said all the responsible people will be found and punished. And all responsible people ends up at the key question: who gave the order of this premeditated murder? The second part is the CIA director. CIA director is in Istanbul right now, actually. She came to Turkey, and the reason of the trip is partly the conclusion that the CIA had concluded that the Saudi explanation, or the Saudis' rogue killers, rogue operatives explanation, does not hold. And the U.S. intelligence also admits that such an operation, such a murder, is not possible without the consent and approval of the top Saudi government. So the CIA is probably trying to pick up the pieces for Donald Trump, because he's kind of also involved with this case through his son-in-law.
Yes, but Mr. Taleh, I do want to come back to the point of how this has been reported in the Turkish media. There have been several kinds of reports. Some may be true, some speculative. There were reports of an iWatch which may have gathered evidence. That, of course, was rebuffed later. There's now supposedly a tape. The president of Turkey did not mention that tape in his speech. So where is the solid evidence that we were hoping to get today from the president as well?
Everything that has been published in the Turkish media and the international media have actually been confirmed by the president's speech. Now, all those unattributed reports and info can now be attributed to the president of Turkey.
Yeah.
And there have been a very solid consistency between what the media has reported, what the international media has reported, and what other intelligence services have found out. The U.S. intelligence admits that everything that came out of Turkey actually is corroborated by their information.
And I do want to go back to the point about your saying and mentioning that body parts of Jamal Khashoggi have been found. So the worst could, in a sense, be confirmed. And, you know, this is not just about the freedom of the press. This is about how to handle a country that is an ally, a key ally for so many different countries, including many in South Asia, as well as for India and, of course, for America as well. Sources, of course, reports indicating, as you pointed out as well, that the body parts have been found at the Consul General's home. His face has been disfigured. And I want to go back to the point about what will be the real consequences here for Saudi Arabia. Let's not just talk about condemnation here. We know that some countries have pulled out of the Saudi Arabian summit, investment summit, but what more can we expect that should happen?
The investment summit is the least of what may happen. I mean, that's the least of troubles for Saudi regime. We're talking about who's going to rule Saudi Arabia in the next 40 years. And it's getting highly unlikely that Prince MBS will be that person. The second part is President Erdogan made an also important call for the international culprits to be punished too. Let's not forget that the execution team have left Istanbul on 2 private jet planes, and those planes landed in Cairo and Dubai on the way back, and who happened to be, as you mentioned, good old Saudi allies, Egypt and United Arab Emirates. A thorough investigation might also find out that the culprits might have some connection with Dubai and maybe Cairo, who knows. So all we need is a good international investigation on this.
Right. Salim Atale, senior journalist, commentator for Turkey 24 Istanbul. Thanks very much indeed for joining us with that big information coming in. Reports now suggesting that body parts of Jamal Khashoggi may have been found at the Saudi Arabian Consul General's home, indicating that the worst may be true in this story, in this horrible news coming in this evening.